Okay, everyone, I'm glad you're here. My name is Janice, and it's my pleasure to be acting as president for Kasha right now. And I'm honored to introduce today's speaker, Wilber Turner. I knew about Wilber as a leader and advocate in our local queer community, and I was delighted to interview him on the Divorcing Religion podcast about his experiences growing up in the religious group known as the 2x2s. You can find that on the YouTube channel. Wilber Turner is the founder and president of Advocacy Canada, whose mission is to foster unity and amplify the voices of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community and their allies, driving transformative change on vital issues. Kasha and Advocacy Canada have recently partnered together to encourage our city councillors to re-examine criteria for the permissive tax exemptions for religious groups in Kelowna who are divisive rather than inclusive. Today, Wilber will be sharing with us about the power of allyship. Wilber, I appreciate your passion and your willingness to work for change in Kelowna and Canada. You make this a better place. Welcome, Wilber Turner. Would you like to clip that on you somewhere that makes sense?
Thank you very much, Janice. Appreciate the lovely welcome. This is my second time coming to be with you folks and share some thoughts. So I'm happy to talk about the power of allyship. And I just want to let you know that this presentation was actually prepared for Pink Shirt Day because I did a keynote for BC Housing for Pink Shirt Day in February. So I thought it would be a good topic to share now because it's very timely, especially with federal election happening, which we all know about. So I'm just going to share a little bit about me first. As Janice mentioned, I grew up in a cult, a religious cult called that actually doesn't have a name, which is kind of, cultish. But people refer to them as the 2x2s, and the reason for that is that the ministry is either two women or two men that travel together. They are homeless, so they give away all their possessions to become a minister. They do not take any formal training to be a minister, and they have no homes, no cars, no worldly possessions. Some of them sneakily have bank accounts. They're not supposed to do that. Some of the elders in the church hold the money, and they live with the members of the church. So they travel around. They're assigned a district, and the two of them will travel around the district they're assigned to for a year. They signed a district, and so, for example, Kelowna might be one district. Penticton might be another district. They're all over the world, so it's not just in Canada. One of my brothers was a minister up until he passed away, so they actually give their life to the ministry, and so they don't have a salary. They live on donations of people when they go and stay in their homes. People leave them envelopes of money. And so they survive off of just cash donations. So I grew up in that, and I was in that church until I was 38 years old, and that's when I came out as gay. And I had been married for 18 years. I have 2 children. I have now 2 grandchildren. And when I came out, they didn't know what to do with me, so they tried to create all these things to try and force me to conform. And what it did instead was force me to leave the church. So I left when I was 38. And it was quite traumatic because for a number of reasons, there was a lot of bullying involved. And so when I'm talking about allyship and bullying, it's all kind of part of the intertwined into that story of how people of influence in organizations like that can use bullying as a tactic to try and have you conform to their rules. And if you don't conform, then you don't have a place And when you don't have a place anymore in an organization like that, they shun you. So you're cut off from your family, you're cut off from your friends. We weren't actually supposed to have friends outside of the church. So when I left the church, I had zero network, other than a few family that still supported me. And I still have family in that church who do not support me, and we're pretty much estranged. But good news, um, I was able to build a very good network of people outside of that church, mostly started just through work and people I work with. And the more I tell the story about my upbringing and how it evolved, the stranger the looks I get are from people who can't believe that that's still happening in the world today. The church is now under investigation for sexual abuse, child sexual abuse and sexual abuse, um, both against male and female members of the church and children. And the FBI has a special page for investigation on this organization, which is going on globally. So lots of stories have come out in the last couple of years with regard to abuse that they always just covered up and tried to hide from people. So over the years, I've done a lot of advocacy work as a gay man for the queer community, and it's evolved into more lately doing a lot of work for the trans community because they are the ones who are under attack. And I just got the news a couple of weeks ago that the University of British Columbia Senate has chosen me for an honorary Doctor of Laws degree. Yeah. And it's for the community work I've been doing. So this is pretty special to me because as a young kid I was gay but didn't know I was gay. I was picked on in school because of it. I left school when I was 17. I did not finish school. I did not get a diploma. My parents did not want me to go to university because that cult doesn't really believe in post-secondary education because they want you to get married and have children, or they want you to become a minister. So that was the choices I had in life. So I chose to get married and have children. And as much as my parents actually wanted me to they wanted all their kids to be ministers because their ministers are kind of exalted and they have a special place in the church, and their parents are exalted as well because that means that they're better. There's this hierarchy. So for me to get I did go back to school and I got a degree in programming, computer programming, but that was as an adult. But for me to get this degree, honorary degree, is really special to me because of the circumstances that have brought me on this path. So I was very excited. Yeah.
When will you be hooded so we can come and celebrate the event?
June 5th is convocation at UBCO. And I think it's in the social sciences faculty that it'll be part of that convocation. So I will get more information. I don't know all the details yet, but they actually told me that I'm getting a gown. They're lending me a gown to wear. So I'm one of 3 people in the Okanagan to get this degree this year, and the Doctor of Laws degree is the highest honorary degree they offer. So I was like really blown away by it. I will. So a little bit more about me. I have a day job. I'm a program coordinator for Health Initiative for Men. That organization is a nonprofit out of Vancouver. I work from home in Kelowna as a program coordinator. And what we do is we advocate for mostly gay men's health, but it's evolving now into more broader spectrum of trans health and gender diverse things. So I do a lot of education. I actually teach guest lecture at the university for all first-year nurses, first-year in School of Nursing. This year I've taught about probably 600 students at university. I teach to the second-year psychology students on, and that course is it's my autobiography. It's my coming out story to teach psychology students about, what people deal with in their coming out. And I always tell people that um, my experience is that you never stop coming out, because as a gay person or a trans person, if you're trans, you're always in new situations where people don't know. And you don't always have to tell them. It's not important. But in some cases it is, because people will ask you questions like, oh, are you married? And, oh, what's your wife's name? And then you have to tell them. So you're always in situations like that. You're always coming out. I'm the founder and president of Advocacy Canada, as Janice mentioned. I formed this organization 4 years ago now, almost in June. And we do advocacy work for the queer community, which is what I call my name for the 2S LGBTQIA+, because I don't like saying the whole alphabet every time I explain it. And I'm a blogger. I write a blog almost every day, a blog article. Today's blog article was The Trap of Populism. And so you can look me up on Substack. My handle is Queer Granddad, because I'm queer and I'm a granddad. And my Substack banner is Queerly Beloved. So it's a play on my background in religion and stories. So that's a little bit about me. I've lived in Kelowna since 2011. I did go back to Calgary for 3 years and deeply regretted it. Couldn't wait to get back here. So I'm going to talk about what is allyship. What do you think of when you hear allyship? What's something that comes to mind? I'm asking you. Friendship, association, yeah. Support, yeah.
Different word for fellowship?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's different things that allyship is. And when I think about allyship, I think about accomplices. That's my word for it, because it feels like you're like up to something together. Allyship in the world of gay rights, trans rights, 2S LGBTQI plus rights, queer rights, it's something that is more needed now than ever because of the political landscape. So when you look at things why it's needed, there's intersectionality. So what I mean by that is someone can be gay and they can be black. Someone can be a person of color and gay. They can be two-spirit, which is the indigenous word for phrase for being queer. Two-spirit in the indigenous world was, I think it was coined, maybe in the late 80s, early 90s, but it was to describe a person who was revered and looked up to in indigenous culture. And it was something that when colonization happened, the explorers who wrote and documented what they found among indigenous people in North America on Turtle Island actually erased two-spirit people from their writings. They didn't even mention them because they didn't get it, they didn't understand it, didn't think it was important. So there was no mention of two-spirit people, trans people, male, like would have been male physically, biologically, who performed feminine roles in culture, people who are two-spirit who were considered to be like the medicine keepers and those kind of things. They just did not even talk about it. So they were completely erased in those writings. And also the other reasons for marginalized groups face higher rates of bullying. So we can see it when you hear the rhetoric about immigration, anti-immigration, all those kind of things. And if you intersect that in with queer people and queer communities, there's just another layer of bullying. And sometimes there's what we call lateral violence. So there's people within the gay community who attack other people in the community because they don't think that they belong. So for example, there's gay and lesbian people who don't want trans people associated with our community. So they say it's LGB. They don't want to talk about the T and the Q. And they call people who identify as queer, like myself, as radical activists. And so you'll see things like gays against grooming, libs of TikTok. A lot of them are also called gay log cabin Republicans. So they're gay people who vote for Trump, and they're actually very dangerous because they want to. It's called assimilation, where they don't want to stand out and they don't want to be seen as being gay. So they think that if you are visible and you have pride festivals and pride parades and things, you're actually drawing negative attention to them. So they don't like it. So that's another reason. So there's power dynamics. People with power and influence actually have a lot of, can cause a lot of oppression in our community. So what percentage of the population age 15 or over do you think identify as queer? Have any ideas?
I would guess 11%. 15%?
Four. Yeah, some of them, yes. This is in surveys and polls like Stats Canada. So some people are not going to actually identify. So the numbers it's actually around 10 to 11, we think, %. But this is actually the ones who actually are willing to put up their hand and say, because some people are afraid to, because they're afraid that government data is going to become used against them like it is in the US. So right now in the US, the Doge people are actually data mining all through Social Security and all the databases, and they're pulling up information based on characteristics, even things like tattoos, skin color. They're criminalizing, they're putting kids on lists that are 13 years old because of this. So if you are trans in the US, you're a target. If you're gay in the US, you're a target because they actually have that data on you now. So that's one of the reasons why people don't want to be identified. Allyship, and this was because it was for BC Housing, but I'm going to talk about it here too because it's important for people to understand that allyship in housing is critical. And part of the reason why it is because a lot to do with trans rights and trans discrimination. So if you look at homelessness and the 2S LGBTQI population, 65% of homelessness before age 25 are kids. And this is mostly to do with religion. So you look at religious beliefs, especially in this area of the country where there's a lot of churches and a lot of Christianity that have homophobic, transphobic views and doctrine. You will see that kids, if you go down to BGC Okanagan, you'll find out that more than half of the kids that are homeless that come in there for services are queer. So this is another one of the reasons housing is super important. When it comes to male versus identified, female identified people, homeless youth identifying as queer, questioning, or trans, it's 1 in 3 females and 1 in 10 males. And this is from, if you look up BC Human Rights Coalition or AMHA, you'll see these statistics from surveys that they've done. So it's actually pretty horrific when you talk about it. And I want to talk a little bit about a specific example in Kelowna. So the Praxis Church has their church services at the Rotary Center for the Arts. And this has been going on for over a year. So January 2024, they started having services there. They started with 1, they went to 2 every Sunday. Now they're at 3 every Sunday. So they have a quickly growing population or membership. They do their baptisms down at the lake. They did one in February, if you can believe it, in the lake. They were baptizing people in the lake in February. So they're pretty much diehard Christians, is what I call them. And so they're holding their services there. And if you look at their doctrine, there's nothing really on their website that says anything about this. But if you look at their membership handbook that they have to study before they can become a member, it says that homosexuality is a sin, and that the variance between your gender assigned at birth and your gender you identify with, if there's a variance, is a result of sin in the world. So it might not be your sin, but it's a result of sin in the world. So this is what is being rammed into those people's brains. And that we've had an issue, like where we've talked to the news about this, because we don't think that a Rotary Center for the Arts, which is funded by the city predominantly, and tax grants and charitable donations. The city owns the property, and the society that runs it gets about $500,000 a year from the city to run it. Plus, they make money off of rent, of course. So we don't think that an arts and culture organization should be a megachurch, and they are a megachurch, because if you look at Praxis's website and all their social media pages, their office, it shows their location is Rotary Center for the Arts. And when they take it over every Sunday. They take over the whole space. They have every room that's available rented out. The dance studios are Sunday school. They have a nursing mother's room. They have different age groups for kids. They have the hallways full of signs. They have big signs out the front. It's a mega church on Sundays, and they run. I went and sat there, and I listened one Sunday out in the lobby. You can't get away from it. You can't get away from the sound, the speaking. They have a big band that plays. They did the Alternator Center for the Arts, which is an art space in there, had a interactive exhibit where you could put notes on their glass windows. And this one Sunday Monday they came in to work, and there was all these Bible verses written all over it. So that's what's going on in there. Did you have a question? Praxis. Yeah, they're a new church to Kelowna. They're about 3 years here or so. They're called it's just in Kelowna, but they're called a plant church. So for those of you who are familiar with plant churches, they're supported by other churches that are well established, so they fund them to get them going. And once they get going and can fund themselves, then they're self-supporting. But right now there's 3 or 4 big churches in the Lower Mainland that support them.
It's like a born-again Baptist type thing. They're always making churches out of those.
Yeah, that's kind of like that. Yeah, yeah. And the pastor said when he was interviewed about our complaint, we don't ever turn anyone away. Everyone is welcome, but you can't be a member if you're a certain type of person. So yes, you can't be a member if you're a practicing homosexual or identify as trans. The same as Lake Country Alliance Church. Like they're the same. They welcome everybody. They say they welcome everybody. A lesbian couple went there and got discriminated against. Even after the pastor told them they were welcome to come, they couldn't become members. They had to divorce.
You ever tell them if you're practicing homosexual, you already have to figure it out?
Yeah, don't need to practice. So let's talk a little bit about bullying of youth, and this happens to adults too. But this is a very sobering number. What percentage of sexually and gender diverse youth do you think are the target of bullying? What percentage?
I'll go 65.
65?
I'd say 90.
90? You're close. 77%. But even this number is high. Like if you're a straight cisgender person, Cisgender means that you identify as the gender that you were assigned at birth. So I'm a cisgender person. If you're not, you're either non-binary or you're trans. So yeah, 77. So it is higher for gender diverse youth.
And the cisgender youth attracted to a different gender.
Yeah, so they're straight. Yeah.
So the,
Yeah.
more than 2/3 of all the kids,
Yeah.
irrespective of anything other
Yeah.
than that they're two-legged, are being bullied.
Yeah.
That's horrific.
It is horrific. And the thing is that when you talk to kids who are bullied and there's Pink Shirt Day that's supposed to like bring it to attention, it really has little effect on other than I think making people feel like they're doing something. So it's not really effective. I talked to a man a couple of days ago whose grandson is being bullied at school. The kid is straight, and he said he's being bullied by a girl, and he gets picked on and slapped and kicked and spit on, and the girl punched him one day, so he punched her back, and he was the one who got in trouble. So you don't know what to do with those kind of situations. I want to talk a little bit about the types of stigma that kids face that lead to bullying. So there's the stigma is what starts. And a lot of the stigma actually starts in the home because of parents' belief. And that's the top one there. It's 57% being shunned by family. And I was shunned by family when I was an adult because I came out. But what do you think it's like for kids who don't have family support? And then you see the provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan where they are forcing teachers to out their kids to their parents. So if a kid confides in a teacher at school that they are gay or trans or non-binary and they're looking for some type of support, in Alberta and Saskatchewan, the teachers are obliged to tell the parents. And when the violence happens at home and the kids are scared to tell their parents at home, it's for a good reason and they shouldn't be forced. Like there's no reason to force them. The next one is being verbally harassed or threatened. That's 52%. So just, starts with, words and then it ends up into physical. And feeling like others don't understand them, it's at 50%. Being physically harassed or threatened, 49%. And online bullying is 48%. So one of the things that I think is important about this, and we hear this all the time, is you hear the term SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity. In BC in schools, it's called SOGI 123. And what that is it's resources for teachers to make classrooms feel welcoming to queer kids. And a lot of people think it's a actual curriculum, and it's not a curriculum. And there's a lot of misinformation out there and disinformation about what SOGI 123 is. And so there's this pervasive narrative that it's indoctrinating children and it's turning them gay or trans. And as a gay person, I know it's very solidly in my being who I am. And I grew up in a culture where the word wasn't even said. And I knew I was different. So it's really, to me, very odd that people think that you can actually be persuaded to be gay or trans. Like it's a life that you wouldn't choose as something, like because it's cool or something, right? It's a life that's challenging and difficult. So it just doesn't make sense to me. So there's a little bit about the stigma that comes. Cyberbullying is a real thing, and often online harassment actually turns into real world harm, and it emboldens people. And there's a lot of this online, and I call it cruelty for clout. And the reason I call it cruelty for clout is because of social media and people posting stuff because they want attention. And if the more cruel they get, the more attention they get, they just keep going. It becomes a cycle. So they just, you'll see, you hear stories of kids being beaten up at school and nobody's stopping it. They're all filming it. And they're just watching because they want to post it on social media because they think it's going to give them attention. And that's really super dangerous.
One of the problems with the social media is, like, when I was a kid in school, kids got bullied, but 4:15 or 3:15, the bell would ring, you all head home and you go home and you have your family and do your homework and you can kind of get away from it, right? They can't get away from it.
No, it's everywhere. And kids don't have they can't self-regulate into, putting that device down and realizing that it's not the real world, that social media is not the real world. Political bullying, and this is very predominant today. And this is policies and legislation that target minorities. So I'll give you an example I already mentioned Alberta. So the Premier of Alberta decided that she was going to label this protecting trans children from harm. So she brought in legislation that prohibits gender-affirming care for youth under 18. And what does that do? That actually, so just to back up a little bit, gender-affirming care comes in many forms. It can be medical treatment, it can be socially gender-affirming, so just using someone's pronouns that they choose, or a chosen name, versus the name they were given. That's social transitioning. Kids may have social transition by clothing, by hairstyles, and that is something that makes them feel good. And so allowing them to do that is important, to self-identify. But the other forms of gender affirming care is medical treatments. So puberty blockers are one of the main ones. And what a puberty blocker does is it's non-permanent medical treatment that allows them to pause puberty until they can make up their minds that this is actually how they identify. So it stops the advancement of puberty, which makes body changes that are not reversible. So if it just allows kids to have that time, and their parents and their caregivers, their medical professionals, time for them to assess everything and make sure that this is the right thing. And if they go off the puberty blockers, it automatically, puberty starts and everything goes back to normal. So it's important, but when you take it away, kids now feel that they don't have a future, and they have a future that's now going to be scarred by body changes that they can't reverse, and that may require significant surgery to reverse, or to try to reverse. So gender affirming care is important. It's medically proven to work and pretty risk-free. And so the only things that cause more permanent changes is surgeries, and those for the most part are not available until kids are 18. So it's a very nuanced situation, and I always try and educate people that it's not my job and it's not the public's job or the government's job to decide how a family and their medical professionals decide what treatment is appropriate for a child. It's between the kid, the parents, and the medical professional or the guardian of that child. So we don't need to see governments involved, and it really is political bullying. And then the other part of it is the people that don't care that this is happening because it doesn't affect them. So they will happily vote for a political party that does this bludgeoning of targets kids and it's only for political purposes. It's weaponizing a very, very small percentage of people, less than 1%, like 0.01% of people, You see it in the conversation around trans women in sports, and those kind of things as well. It's a very, very small percentage of people. And even like when you talk about sports professionals, there is less than 1.01% of people in sports who are trans, especially trans women. And that includes the coaches and like paid people that are paid to run teams. Gender policing. So forcing compliance with gender stereotypes. So this is where you see things like wanting to police who uses a particular bathroom or washroom, public washroom. This causes all kinds of problems because there's so much variation in gender presentation even among cisgender people. Take women, for example. It's true with men, but women are the most often, it's called transmisogyny. That's the term that's used to describe the discrimination against trans women. But it affects cisgender women as well because there's policing based on what you look like. So if a woman doesn't look perfectly feminine and she looks more butch or tomboyish and she's cisgender, she will be targeted as if she's a trans woman. And that happens in sports, that happens in people using washrooms, people trying to police gender. So it happens a lot, and it's another form of bullying. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about education because one of the things that we need to talk about is bias when it comes to education, and that's why I do this talk. It's why I do some of the talks I do to university kids, and it's to address the bias that we all come with. We all come with a bias because we grow up in a pink and blue world where you walk down the toy aisle in the store and you know, like the boys aisle, what's in the boys aisle? Dump trucks and war games and, you know, all the like macho things. And you walk down the girls aisle, it looks like a unicorn threw up in it, you know, like it's all like sparkles and rainbows. So we grow up in that. So we already come with a bias. We're trained to look at people and assess their gender. We look at somebody and if it's confusing to us, then if it doesn't fit in a box, it's confusing. So that actually can cause problems too, because you can approach somebody and you can be offensive without even trying. So it's important to self-educate. It's important to do homework and not just swallow all the pills that people put out for you, especially on social media. One thing that can happen too is in allyship is looking at policies in the workplace. So if you're involved in a workplace, look at the policies to see if there's policies that actually anti-discrimination policies that support and nurture diversity, equity, inclusion, which is now a woke bad word. But there's important parts of it. I worked for an organization for a couple of years, a big telecom company, and we used to have employee resource group listening sessions. And the listening sessions were for people who weren't part of that minority to sit and listen and create a safe space for people to share what they needed to share about their experience in the job or in life as a result of being a minority. So it could have been people of color, it could have been Indigenous people, could have been the Rainbow Resource Group, but it was listening sessions. So as a gay person, I could go and sit in people of color's listening session, or I could sit in a Two-Spirit or an Indigenous listening session and learn. And so those are really, really important. DEI programs, there's this fallacy out there now that this just takes away jobs from straight white people. There's no other better way to say it, but it is all calling things woke, and you see what's happening in the US around DEI and making it into a bad word. But really all it does is it levels the playing field so that people who are normally disadvantaged and don't get a seat at the table actually have a chance. And now you've got professors at the University of British Columbia suing the university over their DEI policy and land acknowledgements. And they're saying that it's political to say that the university is on unceded land. So how can it be political when it's an actual fact? There's no treaty agreements on the land that the university is sitting on. It's unceded land. It's a fact. But they're saying it's political, and they're forcing them to give land acknowledgements, and they don't like it. And they don't like being forced to sign that they support diversity, equity, inclusion. So they're suing the university. And there's 3 of them that are actually here in Kelowna, and 2 in Vancouver. So this is a new thing. It's the wave. It's the maple wagon. It's the wave coming up from the south. So what does allyship look like in action? So one of the things is centering marginalized voices. So it's not speaking for people. It's actually creating a space for them to speak. So I'll give you an example of that. March 31st every year is called Trans Day of Visibility. We put on an event, Advocacy Canada put on an event called Trans Day of Visibility. We held it down at the Laurel Packing House, and all of the speakers, the MC, the keynote speaker, the MC, the performers were all trans and non-binary people. So the only part I had in it as the president of Advocacy Canada was to give the land acknowledgement and welcome people. Everything else was trans people. And that's centering those voices. Like, I don't need to be up there talking. We need to give space for people who are marginalized and underrepresented in our culture. Challenging discrimination. So when you see it, say something. Don't just let it go. When I talk about allyship, I also talk, when I said accomplice, sometimes you need to walk beside somebody. Sometimes you need to get in front of them to take the heat for them. So you need to be prepared to actually do the work. And we always see during Pride Month, we always see, corporations changing their logos and putting pride colors and rainbows all over it. And it actually, a lot of it is called pinkwashing, because they just do it because they want to get the attention, and the rest of the year they don't give a shit. So they don't really care. They don't come to the table when you need them to fight for you. They only come there because it's attracting dollars. So I'm not in favor of it. If they do the work all year, yes. But if you're not there when we need you, please don't change your logo just for pride. Positive use of privilege. So I recognize my immense privilege as a white person, a cisgender person, who can help trans people when it comes to discrimination. So I use my privilege and I use my voice and my networks to support and advocate for the trans community, because people listen to me. So I use that, like I have an advantage. And organizational allyship really comes into like being part of an organization that actually has values, stated mission in their mission and values, where they support everybody. I'm not just talking here about queer people. I'm talking about allyship in general in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion. Affirming people's identity. So this is an easy one. So if you, an easy way to affirm people's identity is just to use the pronouns and name that they want you to use. Have name tags that actually, if you have an event, have name tags that actually identify your pronouns. And why would you do that? If you're a cisgender person and you are welcoming people to an event, why would you want to put your pronouns on your name tag? What would it do?
Just to normalize people putting their own pronouns on their name.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is that it will make people feel safe with you. So they will say, oh, there's a person I can talk to. There's a person who understands why it's important. And the reason that people, the idea of putting pronouns on name tags came out is because gender presentation doesn't always match the gender you identify with. So you can misgender somebody quite easily. So that's the reason for the use of the pronouns. Calling out transphobia and homophobia, providing resources, and creating safe spaces. So safe spaces is if you, another example is if you have an event, think about how do you make it safe for everybody? How do you make it safe for people of color? How do you make it safe for trans people? One example, I was asked to give a talk at City of Kelowna nonprofit conference last year on creating inclusive events. And the keynote speaker actually said stuff that made a whole group of people get up and leave because she was talking about what words were feminine and what words were masculine. She had this word thing on her slides, and she had got people to identify, is this a masculine energy? Is this a feminine energy? Is this like, it was nuts. Like, in today's world where we have a lot of diversity, we don't need to label words as masculine and feminine. I mean, the French do it, but that's part of their language, right? So, and the other thing too is, in that event, they didn't have anywhere, when you have a conference, it's easy for people to be triggered by something. Somebody's going to get triggered, and it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means that they got triggered. So how are you going to deal with that? You actually have a place where they can go and talk about it. And they didn't do that at this conference. They just didn't have a way to deal with it. They didn't anticipate. They didn't think about it. So you can actually deal with that by having a place where people can decompress and just be heard, listened to. That mostly does it, and learn from next time. The other thing too about inclusive events is and safe spaces is if you have a big event and you expect that you want to welcome everybody, and you think that, well, there's probably going to be some non-binary or trans people come to this event. What do you think that those people are going to do? The first thing they do when they come, say it's a conference, what are they going to do when they get there? Before they go sit in a room, they're going to check out where the washrooms are because they want a safe place to pee. So gender neutral washrooms are just another thing that people don't think about. How important it is to people to feel safe is that they will actually come early before there's a lot of people, and they will scout the place out to make sure that they've got somewhere safe to.
And if I may, even when I'm going to be talking to a group where I used to say ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
I just say welcome everyone.
Yeah.
Instead of
yeah.
People don't think of that.
I sometimes say ladies and gentlemen, theys and thems.
Yeah.
So you can do that too, or say hi, folks.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And BNA is the same. Like.
Starbucks individual bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And like Revelry, they have individual stall washrooms. BNA has individual stall washrooms that freak people out because you all go into one room, and people think they're in the, like, where am I? They think they're in the women's washroom because there's no urinals. And they come roaring, the guys come, you sit and watch them, they come roaring out, they're looking for the sign. Freaks them out.
So what do you say to those women in those circumstances that feel insecure, feel they're not safe?
Well, you actually want to think about including them in the planning so that they can have their voice and say, if you're going to create an inclusive event, include people in the planning that will have as stakeholders. And that's what I encourage people to do, so that you actually give them a chance to incorporate their ideas into the planning and creating safe space. Another thing about, and this is not necessarily queer related, but we find a lot of neurodivergent people coming to our events, and they wear headphones because the sound bothers them. So if you have loud music and stuff, you want to have a quiet room where they can go and get away from it. The other thing is ASL. We bring interpreters in now, sign language interpreters into all our events, because there's people that come and they don't always, you don't know before you have an event. And it creates a more safe space too, because now they feel included. So there's a lot of different things you can do.
There's one hotel in Calgary that they changed all their washrooms into gender-neutral washrooms, and they label them as gender-neutral with urinals, or
Yes.
gender-neutral without.
Yeah. We actually, that's a really great idea. And we did that for our event last, the 31st at the Laurel. We actually put signs over top of the signs on, and it said gender neutral washroom has urinals, and then the other one said gender neutral washroom with stalls. So,
The women were like that at the Calgary Stampede when they're lined up 100
yes,
feet down.
I know, exactly.
Not just the Calgary Stampede, everywhere.
So, just a little bit of story about what Advocacy Canada is doing. So back in 2023, there was an anti-SOGI billboard put up in West Kelowna. It had a caricature of a school teacher with purple hair and glasses, and she looked mad. And there was a pride flag behind her, and it said, "What are your children? Do you know what your kids are learning in school?" And so I heard it was going up. They were doing a fundraiser. This guy was doing a fundraiser for it online, so I knew it was going to go up. And then when it went up, we mobilized to get it taken down. And the guy who put it up posted on social media, said, because they interviewed me about it on the news, and he said, "Oh, it's just Wilber, it's just one guy, and he doesn't have what it takes." And my response was, "You actually don't know that there's a whole community that I'm speaking with, and we're going to take that down." And so in 10 days, we had it down. And it was thanks to the intervention from West Bank First Nation chief, who called the sign company and said, "You have to take it down," because the sign company refused. That was freedom of expression. So we decided we would put up our own billboard. So we did a fundraiser on GoFundMe. In 2 weeks, we raised $8,000. And we hired an artist, Indigenous queer artist from Kelowna, and she designed this billboard. And we had a focus group that came up with the theme for the message, and then we consulted with the Syilx Language House to come up with a phrase that goes with it. So the message was "You belong," and the Inchilikan phrase says "Kuya ya ku chungkwan nehiyam." It means we all join together. We are all together, because they don't have a belong in the Inchilikan language, because belonging means property. So they consulted with language scholars, and they came up with that phrase. So we put up this billboard, and it was up for 16 weeks. And there was one in east entrance to Kelowna from Lake Country, and one in West Kelowna. So on the gateways into Kelowna, 3 million people drove by those billboards in 16 weeks. And then we turned it into wearable art. So that first image on the screen with me with a hoodie had some of the symbols from that. And we just had another design sprint where we've reimagined the designs and taken some of them out of, changed the font in the "You Belong" to make it more playful, and we're creating more. So we have t-shirts and hoodies, and we're going to have thermoses. We've got mugs, magnets, stickers that we sell, and we've raised several $1,000s for our nonprofit just through selling merchandise. For Pink Shirt Day, we sold 200 shirts this year. So right across Canada. We had one organization that bought like several dozen just for their staff. So that's a little bit about what we're doing to show allyship. So the call to action is to stand up and speak out. Don't be silent. It takes a lot of voices, and we're in a time now where we've got a potential prime minister who is saying there's only two genders. He's echoing the Trump speech, and he's the apple muncher, in case you're wondering who he is. And so we need to be really vigilant. And I find this with family. I've got family who vote Conservative, and yet they tell me they're an ally. And when I try to explain to them why that's harmful to me and my community, they don't get it. It's economics. It's not about human rights. So I'm open to questions. If you have anything that springs to mind, or questions you have about what I said or what I didn't say.
Just an observation, you know, the religion you came from, or the culture you came from, with the poor priest. There's a parallel in Hindus, right, with the sadhus who are wandering holy men who have no worldly possessions and are dependent on the kindness of
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I don't know if it's true in that religion, but in the religion that I came from, it's a male-dominated hierarchy. So the men in the ministry are in charge of the women. So the women never have a leadership position. It's always the men.
Right, and you can listen to my interview with Wilber on the Divorcing Religion podcast. You just type in Divorcing Religion, and Wilber, that interview will come up. And also, I'm hosting an online conference in May. It's called Shameless Sexuality, Life After Purity Culture. And you go to shamelesssexuality.org, which I tell everyone is short for orgasm. Like, it's not actually. It's how people remember shamelesssexuality.org. And I will have trans speakers and others from the queer community, and then straight people, people of color. I'm trying to get it as diverse as possible, but everybody's coming from the angle of having been indoctrinated religiously into purity culture, which led to a non-acceptance of very normal, you know, healthy sexuality. So that's what that's about. And I'd love to see how I can partner with Advocacy Canada with
Yeah.
all of that, or because I've also worked with people who have endured, you know, where they try and train them out of being gay, the so-called
Conversion.
therapy
Yeah.
stuff, and that just leaves such a scar.
Yeah, and you know, conversion therapy is now illegal in Canada. However, it's still happening. So it's done subtly. They don't call it conversion therapy now. They just call it discipleship and other forms of religious indoctrination, prayer. Uh, prayer works, of course. You can change your sexual orientation, apparently. But you know, when you talk about sexual purity, it's very big in the 2x2s. And so no sex before marriage. You got to save yourself for marriage. And so one of the reasons I got married at 19 is because I wanted to have sex. And you couldn't have sex unless you were married, or you weren't supposed to, actually. Not that you couldn't have it, it's just you couldn't openly talk about it. I'm sure it went on a lot, but people just didn't talk about it. And the other thing that happened too is it causes a lot of unwed mothers, like births out of marriage, because kids are not educated about sex. They're not educated about how you get pregnant or how you get sexually transmitted infections. And there's going to be, and it might be Hulu, I'm not sure who's doing it, but there's a documentary happening, and it's what's called the Baldwin babies. And the Baldwin babies are all children who were born to single moms in the 2x2 church. And there was a doctor in Washington State named Dr. Baldwin who was part of the fellowship. And parents would, if their kid got pregnant, they would take her to him, and then he would find somebody in the church to adopt their child. So they weren't allowed to keep their kids. They had to give them up. So they're called the Baldwin babies. And so then they, eventually found out what happened, how they ended up being adopted. So there's a lot of them that were like okay with it, but there was a lot of problems because of it. They were put into homes where they were abused and sexually abused, and there's some horrific stories. But it's all about this purity culture. They had to hide it. Like they couldn't, They couldn't even share that they had a kid who was pregnant.
Right. And cults love to control sexuality.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
I want to ask you about the stand up and speak out for people who are reticent to be seen in any context.
Yeah. So, I think about it as I'm actually targeted a lot in this community because of being a spokesperson and standing out and speaking out. I get online harassment because of it. I get physical harassment because of it. I get chased down the street because of it. I get people in my face with phone cameras trying to record me. I get people following me in my car trying to find out where I live. I get emails sent about me to every political person in the country, pretty much. City councilors, mayor, premier, leader of the opposition, prime minister, leader of the political opposition, Rebel News. Like, there's a whole list of email chain that they send about me every time Advocacy Canada puts on an event. And they say that I'm promoting the sexualization of children. One of them said that I was a self-confessed alcoholic and a danger to children, and you should not bring your children to this event, all which is just bogus stories they make up. But it's because I stand up and speak out. So I can understand when people don't want to become a target. But quite often it's mostly with the people you know that you need to stand up and speak out. So it's around the dinner table. It's when jokes are told that are about certain people because of gender identity or sexual orientation. It's, I worked in, before I came out, I was hearing gay jokes all the time at work from my boss. And they were awful. And because he didn't know I was gay. So it just made me crawl back further in the closet, basically. But we have opportunities to call it out, and it's uncomfortable. And it can be really uncomfortable to call out stuff to people you know in your circle, in your family, and your friends. It takes bravery and courage. But just, I think about it this way, is that if I'm facing that just for speaking out as a cisgender person, how are the people feeling who are everyday targeted? Because as a trans person, I talked about housing, they're discriminated against in housing. So if they don't look like a certain gender that their appearance doesn't look like, they will not get a place to live. They won't be able to get a job. They'll apply for a job, they'll go in for an interview, and they won't ever hear back again. So they're forced out of the market, forced out of housing, they're forced out of jobs, they're forced onto the streets. So if they're facing that every day, I can face some personal, blowback for standing up for them. That's how I feel about it. Does that help too?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. Just to hear that helps me line up inside how to deal with circumstance. And it strikes me that standing up once in a mild circumstance and then noticing how it happened and what it felt like
Yeah.
provides internal feedback for the next.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of stuff that goes on around us. I mean, Jesus, I lived in the U.S. for a long time and came here, and compared to where I lived, the amount of racism, transphobia is low.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I can still see it.
Yeah.
I can still see suspicion and skepticism, and trying to deal with every person that I see in the community in a default positive
Yeah.
affect.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the best I can pull off, but I want to pull that off.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. The thing is, a lot of people will say stuff they wouldn't say to a person's face who's transgender, or if they knew they were gay, they wouldn't say it to their face, but they'll say it behind their backs. So I always say to them, would you actually say that to somebody's face? how would you think they would feel if you said that to somebody who's already facing this every day? They don't choose to be that identity. It's given to them. Well, thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it.